Hello, everyone, and welcome through Poetry and Pain. I know, what a weird title for such a beautiful art form, but this month is National Poetry Month, and today, March the 7th, is National Girl Me Too Day. On this day, we celebrate and talk about the stories of trauma and challenges that we have faced either this year or years before. And we, as women, we get together and figure out how we can get through them. So this is one of those platforms where we're merging a little poetry because I'm Wilnona Marie, one of the And I Thought ladies, and we are a poetic duo. So, a little poetry does seems like the perfect medicine for this. So I'm going to start off by welcoming everyone and telling them a little bit how we came up with this idea. There was a book called And I Thought I Did My Journey Alone. It is the third book that we wrote with 13 other women. They are also called the And I Thought Ladies. And we found that during our time traveling over the 26 weeks out of the year on tour, that as we met women, a lot of them had gone through some of the same challenges or variation of it. And they had part of the solution, which was wonderful because the more you talk to women, the more part of the parts of the solution you got, and the more the puzzle pieces fell into place, and I could see a whole picture. And we thought it was important to bring that to women as well. So, in honor of that, and today, we're gonna go through this journey together. No one actually signed up for open mic, so I guess it's just me doing open mic then. So from the book, And I Thought I Did My Journey Alone, I found one of the greatest ways to welcome people to starting their journey is lesson one. Go figure. Lesson one, chapter one, whatever you'd like to call it. It's always a good way to start, right? So a new journey is both sorrow and hope displayed one step at a time. To start a new journey, you need to leave where you are, forsaking all that you have accumulated for lighter travel. And that means we often leave a lot behind. And one of the things that we leave behind sometimes is the trauma of past relationships. And for that poem, I'm going to do Not For Me. When a man beats you with his words, you need to leave. When a man beats you with his fists, you need to leave. When a man gaslights you into thinking it's all your fault, you need to leave. There have been times, they say, I love him. He will change. I need to do better. I'm scared, but I'm not leaving my house. We hear excuses saying he's more important than me, your own child. Last but not least, staying for the sake of the children. How easily it has been said, but honestly, sometimes it's only about you and him and how it's perceived. Do you see the fear in their eyes? Do you notice the tears in their voice? While hearing with ears that no longer hear, Mama, we need to go. Mama, why do you stay? Along with their hopes and dreams slipping away, becoming just as angry as he. Sure, staying keeps a roof over our heads, but at what cost to our hearts and what damage to our minds? I don't mean to offend, but sometimes for the sake of the children is only an excuse. Don't blame me for telling the true parts of what happens with abuse. I heard these lines before because I am the one of these children to realize it was never about me. I have emotional scars to show it was not for me. I think after that poem, it's kind of clear what it was about, right? Just a little bit of an emotional abuse, the occasional, maybe some physical abuse. And if you're out there and you're dealing with that as a woman, and that is your girl Me Too moment today, we have brought in a lovely person, the CEO or president of I Know Why She Stayed, Kasey Rogers. Kasey Rogers is going to speak with us about emotional abuse and financial abuse and how her organization has helped women deal with this and get the steps and resources to escape. She's also going to tell us a little bit about, hey, what life is like after abuse, because there's a sunshine after all those dark days. Kasey?
Thank you so much, Willowna. um, Your poem really, really resonated with me because there's so much truth behind those words. And the things that I want people to know is writing as a form of getting all of that poison out of your system. Because when you're going through this experience, you really stop being who you are. You take on this persona of the individual that's abusing you. So your words are so important because it helps us identify the fact that, yes, we need to leave. We need to get out of the situation, but we also need to do it safely. And one of the things that I discovered, I wanted to leave desperately my relationship with my abusive ex. And it was very, very difficult because even after years of having a very high profile career, he took over control of our finances when we had children. And that is what made it difficult to leave. It wasn't that I didn't want to leave, it wasn't that I was trying to protect him or do anything. I just didn't have the financial means to leave and have a roof over my head. I didn't have like money to put down on a new apartment. And so there are often extenuating circumstances regarding when somebody leaves. And that's why the initiative created a program called Beyond Survival, the Four Pillars to Rise and Rebuild. Because once you are able to extricate yourself from this very, very difficult situation, then there are steps that you can take that give you an opportunity to rebuild your life and live your best life. And that's what I'm doing right now. It took me a very, very long time to even start talking about the situation because I blamed myself. I didn't really understand the mechanisms of abuse, and I thought I just really had a bad marriage. Um, I would never use the word abuse because I thought of abuse as being, like a weakness, that I was allowing somebody to do something to me. And it caused me a lot of shame. And when I finally did start to talk about it, several of the people that I had been close to for years basically judged me. And it was like, well, if it was so bad, why did you stay? As if I wasn't telling the truth or I was exaggerating it. And I lost a bunch of friendships because I started speaking about it. And then I went kind of underground. I just didn't want to deal with losing friends and people that I cared about and having them make me feel even worse than I did about the entire scenario. I had young kids at the time. He left us penniless. I had to rebuild my life, and it was very, very difficult. But what I will tell survivors is that there are ways to recover and there are ways to rebuild your life. And I have absolutely no regrets. And the reason why I can say that is because I learned so much about the situation, and it allowed me to be kinder and more understanding to those individuals who have experienced things similar. And when I started talking about it, I realized how many people had gone through the same thing. And and sometimes it was almost comical. It was like we would compare notes with, with other girlfriends, and it was like, oh, he did that too, And there is a way that their behaviors trap us and make us believe that it's our fault, that we're the ones that have fallen short. And a lot of times we're grieving those relationships because nobody really starts out like believing that this person that they're either committed to in marriage or committed to in a relationship would do them harm. And we have these expectations of what our lives are going to be like. And when things start to go bad, we look for all of these external reasons like, I kept on blaming it on, things that had happened in his life that had disappointed him, rather than a whole list of behaviors that he had exhibited for a long time, but I just didn't recognize them as being abusive. Like, I'll just give you one example. He used to always try to isolate me. He didn't want me to have friends. And when I did have friends, it was easier for me because I worked very far away from where we lived. So I could go out and I could do things, and he wouldn't really even know about it. But when I mentioned these friendships, everybody was using me. The only reason why they liked me or they were hanging around me was because I was successful and they thought that they could get something out of me. It wasn't because I was a fun person or a good person or whatever. It was always that they were trying to get something out of me. So he made me feel like everything in my life was transactional. And when I finally, I wrote a book. It was a memoir, and it was called I Know Why She Stayed. And I worked with another woman who had a similar experience, and we co authored our stories and put it together and formed the I Know Why She Stayed initiative so that we could produce this very empowering program, Beyond Survival, and to give people kind of like a roadmap for how they can learn about the mechanisms of abuse and understand how to articulate their experience. Um, and since we've been doing that, we've become, like a global, um, like initiative where in the process of launching globally, because unfortunately abuse is something that happens around the world. It's not just something that happens in the United States, and we want other women to be able to connect their experiences with what we've experienced. And I can tell you that some of the things that really, really helped me to heal was simple things. I removed myself from the situation as often as I could so that I could just breathe. I could do things that allowed me to be myself, that I could connect emotionally. And so, one of the things that we do in the program, the first part of the program, is really about telling the story of what we experienced. And then we have something called a reader's guide that basically takes the text of the memoir and shows the behavior connected with that particular situation. So if in the text it shows something like gaslighting, then we explain what gaslighting is and how it's used in an abusive relationship to undermine the confidence of the individual. Because if you start thinking, wait a minute, did that really happen? Or did it happen the way that they said that it did? Then it causes you to be thrown off balance. So, again, what we did was we analyzed the text of the memoir and laid it out in a reader's guide so people can kind of see this is how abuse unfolds, because you don't really even understand the mechanism of coercive control until you are able to step back and say, oh, this is how they do it. Then what we did was in the second part of the program, the second pillar, and I think this is one of the most important pillars, is we provide a way for people to regain their autonomy and to heal. Because when you're going through this situation, you are beaten down so badly that your self esteem is just in the basement. You can't sometimes pick your head up. And it's much easier sometimes to put ourselves in the situation where we're caring for others and redirect our anxiety and our frustration and all of our emotions to taking care of somebody else, like if we have kids or a pet or somebody else, because as women, we have those tendencies to begin with, then we forget to take care of ourselves. So the second part of our pillars is really about advocating for self care. And self care can be something as simple as going for a walk, taking a long shower. giving yourself that necessary break until you're able to extricate yourself from the situation. Because once you start to remove yourself from the situation and identify, I am not that person that he tells me I am. I am a separate individual. I have the rights and the ability to be myself. I don't have to listen to this nonsense that I am less worthy. So we have simple exercises there, whether it's meditation or grounding exercises, and these are all things that people can do on their own. They don't cost anything. Because that's really important, because 99% of women that end up staying in abusive relationships say that the reason why they stay is because they can't afford to leave. Things like, like my husband ruined our credit. We took on all kinds of debt. Um, it was almost impossible at that point for me to find a job because we're in the middle of a recession. So when you're in that situation and you're trying to find an exit strategy, then it's important to kind of fortify yourself and make yourself understand that you are not that person that they tell you, or your abuser tells you you are. You're a separate individual. You're worthy of the love and the respect that you aren't getting at that point. And another one of the pillars in the program really is about reframing the narrative, because the way that abusers are able to hook you for a long time is, again, about telling you or trying to identify who you are. And when you're able to write out the particular exercises that we've have in this, this book, um, you are able to reframe who you are and gain more trust in yourself. So since we started the initiative, basically I'm back to being that person that I was before I got married. The person that I was that had confidence in the ability in myself, and that I am not allowing other people to say and define who I am. I know what I'm capable of. I know what I'm not capable of. And I found so much joy in the friendships that I've been able to establish after. I was always afraid to, I worked in a very male dominated industry, and I was very intimidated by a lot of the women I worked with. I just felt that they were so powerful. Who was I, But since I wrote the memoir, and since we started the initiative, I've grown so much to understand this, like that my sisters are out there struggling with me. And again, I have like so many really deep connections with those people in my community that I have absolutely no regrets. What I experienced wasn't pleasant, but I've grown and I've learned, and I've become a kinder and gentler person because I understand why they stayed.
So just a few quick questions. What is your greatest experience that you've had after the horrific experience of financial and emotional abuse? What moment did you look back and go, thank God I'm done with that. This has been beautiful. This is worth it.
Um, I am a very creative person in a number of different arenas. And I think one of the joys that I get is I host an open mic night once a week at the studio that's local. And it's this gorgeous studio that is very unique. It's a Meyer sound studio. And I just get to go up there and be me. I, can leave everything behind, and I just am able to connect with people and connect with music and bring it back to a lot of the things that I really enjoyed doing before I felt crushed by the weight of the abuse. And it's a simple thing. I only do it like once, every couple of weeks. That's all they have, the open mic night. But it's just a joyful thing for me to experience. Just it has nothing to do with abuse. It has nothing to do with some of the things that I've experienced. It's just me getting up there and connecting with those people that come up to sing, or sometimes we have people up there doing poetry, or we even have one person that comes and does a comedy act on a regular basis. So it's giving them a platform and being that person that is very welcoming and make them feel like they're the best thing, you know, like whatever their performance ability is, that we welcome them. So that's one of the ways I've been able to kind of rejuvenate.
And for women out there that are at their low point and they're thinking about leaving and they're looking at the struggles and the financial struggles ahead of them, what do you have to say to them?
The very most important thing is stay safe. Do not rush into something. Never tell your abuser that you're going to leave, that you think that threatening will change them, because it won't. As a matter of fact, most of the time it enrages them to the point where they become more violent. And the whole thing about abuse, it's about power and control over another individual. We have our program that is launching soon. It's taken us a long time to get it to the point that it can be in distribution. But we have a whole section which is basically about how you plan to leave, um, so that you are able to remain safe. You're able to take precautions, but you're also able to rebuild your life. It has recommendations for how to access attorneys, how to find a job, how to protect yourself online so that the individual can't find you. So you want to think about yourself in kind of a situation, and it's not a game, but you have to outsmart the person that you're trying to leave. Like I did a lot of things to prepare. Like I slowly moved documents and things, or I copied things, bank statements that I could find. If there were pictures that we had, family pictures, and I didn't want to leave them behind, I took them and scanned them, but I always put them back. So, he wouldn't find that I was doing it. And when I finally did leave, he was totally shocked. He was completely unaware that I was leaving. And there are resources out there. Like one of the things that kept me from leaving for a long time was we had pets. We had 3 cats and a dog. What do you do with your animals? And you feel like you can, pack up your kids, but most apartments and stuff, even if we had the money to secure a new home, a lot of them don't take pets, or they require additional deposits. So now we have a resource guide for the initiative that will even tell you what shelters or what places will, like help foster your pets until you can start to recover. So number one, safety. Do not make the situation worse by saying, I'm going to leave if you don't change, because they're not going to change. That is not within them to do, because it's about power and control. And it makes them want more power and more control over you.
Speaking from someone who was in an abusive relationship, it and who has witnessed a few, like saying that you're going to leave, or we all know that leaving in any way, shape, or form is one of the most dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
in this type of relationship because you are making them question who they are, not in a way that they're going to actually change.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's been said many times, a narcissist, normally you have a narcissist in an abusive relationship, the last thing they want to do is be alone with their own thoughts and their own inadequacies.
Mm-hmm.
You leave, there's no one there but them to look
Mm-hmm.
at. And that is one of the scariest things for them, supposedly. I've
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I don't know what was going on in my ex's head. And I don't think I
Yeah.
could be in his head to know what was going on. It was
Yeah.
rough, rough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really awful. And it's also important not to try to diagnose them or figure them out because we, again, as women, we have this tendency to want to fix them. We think that if we just behave differently, they'll behave differently. And that's not the case. A lot of times, the more compliant you are, or the more you try to fix them, it just backfires. So, trying to figure out what their problem is, they tend to have this feeling that, everybody's against them. My husband used to tell me all the time that he was the black sheep of the family and that he felt very inadequate, that um, the other members of his family were not proud of him because he made certain life choices that they didn't agree with. And he made me feel bad. It was like, oh, you poor sweetheart. You're a really good person. So they use these kind of emotional devices to bring out, like your ability to care. And it's all false. Like a lot of people, when you start talking about their behaviors, they have a very difficult time believing it because they come across as being this nice, nice person. When he died, so many people traveled from where we had been living at the time before we moved because he had cancer and we wanted to get him seen at a hospital in Boston. And the people that showed up at his funeral that had traveled like, miles and miles to come see and come honor and respect him, they loved him. They would never have believed the torment that he put me through for almost our entire marriage. And I have to say, the abuse didn't really start until we had children. And the reason for that is because I always made more money than he did. And I basically financed his lifestyle. He was a freelancer. I was the one that got up and went to work all the time. And I had the regular paycheck and the benefits and stuff. So they have a tendency to make you feel like the whole world is against them and it's just the two of you, or it's you and the family, and you want to take care of them, and it's a very easy trap to fall into. So don't try to fix them. You're not going to. You're not the person that they say that you are, and their behavior, they are responsible for acting the way that they do, and they need to take responsibility, but they won't.
Oh, thank you so much for being here with us today. It has truly been a pleasure to be educated on these things, and especially for you out there who are looking at domestic violence or emotional abuse or financial abuse. And this is the year you're like, this is enough. I thank you in advance for them because this is such a wonderful hope. And I hope that some of them reach out for the resources, or if all else fails, listen to what she said she took and the steps that she did. Because again, the scariest, most difficult part is the part when you are leaving, when you have made up your mind, when you can actually see what the narcissist or the person gaslighting you is doing, and you just had enough. They know. They just don't know what to do about it, but they know. And so that's
Yeah.
the scariest point.
Thank
Well,
you so much.
did you tell us again where we could reach out to see more information about I Know Where She Stayed? Just tell us one more time before I move on to finances.
Okay, it's iknowwhyshe stayed.org, and we're on the web, and you can get lots of information, sign up for our newsletter, um, and would love to hear from you.
Thank you, Kasey. And now we're going to move on to one of my favorite speakers, which is me, by the way. And I barely ever do speaking at my own events, but there's a few things that I thought I would want to share because this is a very difficult time out there in the world. Things are going crazy, especially at the gas pump. It's a bit hard to balance the budget sometimes. And so I'm going to share one of the things that happened to me and my ability to bounce back from it. It kind of does have a nice little bridge because I was in a financially and emotionally abusive relationship. And I'm going to talk about a bit of the financial part, but in a way that's a bit more general that everyone will understand, even if they're not in an abusive relationship. But since this is National Poetry Month and this is a poetry uh, program, we are going to hear a poem because again, we're not doing this journey alone. This is what this whole thing is about, is that we are not doing this journey by ourselves. So the poem is, Does it feel like a circus? Tightrope and dirt beneath, one misstep, one teeter. Or is it totter? Imbalanced or unbalanced, same result. Smattering made of the entrails of dreams, desires, tries, and failures. And ring number two, the trapeze swings, bent knees and extended hands connect, making new acts of impossibility, seemingly done with the greatest of ease. How unbelievable are these? Keeping the balls in the air, the simple task of them all, feet firmly standing to the ground, safety all around. But if one ball drops, it's done. The audience stays at attention, scooting closer to the edge of the bewilderment, not quite grasping what they are seeing in this circus tent. These acts defy gravity. They watch while knowing the potential for calamity. Don't make a mistake. Don't misstep. Don't let the ball drop. Don't let go. If you do, we all know. And a lot of times that's exactly how we feel. Especially when you're balancing that book at the end of the month, the checkbook at the end of the month, or trying to make the ends meet. While I was going through my relationship and after it actually kind of sort of ended, my ex decided that it would be a great idea to financially attack me over and over and over again. So I've went to the bank 13 times over 10 years and found out that I had thousands of dollars in the bank and somehow I had none. My husband had walked in and took it all. Not my husband at the time, but it was all gone. What was there to do about it? There was nothing I could do about it, but they were like, hey, you can start over. And when it wasn't that, it was a bank error, which I eventually found out was also a long, convoluted thing that comes back to my ex. But that's not what the important point was. The important point is a lot of times today, when we look at our bank accounts, when we think that the check is going to make it work, something unexpected happens and we are stuck. And we're wondering how we're going to get things done. So we actually just wrote a book about that. We did it in a fictional way, and it's called The Famous House Cleaners. One of the things that we specifically found is that there are three things that you really want to do when you're looking at your finances or something unexpected happens and it completely wipes you out. Because I mean, the statistics say most Americans, 80% of Americans are not ready for a $1,000 catastrophe, or worse yet, an injury that sends you to a hospital, or things just aren't done. They're not ready for that. So if you're having one of those moments, One of the things that I found was really important, especially when I walked in on those days that I really, really needed gas and there was nothing there, was to daily review your target. So the moment I walked in, I had before actually, I walked in and after about, I think about the fourth or fifth time this happened, I started to break down my income goals into daily targets so that I knew that I was able to cover them. There was some money that went into the bank, and then there was some money that stayed out of the bank. And then there was some money that pretty much got invested. I know a lot of you are out there saying like, "Oh, I don't have money to invest." And that's perfectly understandable. Then don't follow this one. Or if you can find a way to do fractional investing, I mostly do it into dividend stocks because it gives me a way to have a trickle sort of income. So just say like one day I am about $4 and I need 50 cents. A lot of times if my dividends are there and it's a tiny little fraction account that I had, then yeah, the 50 cents was there. I could just use that. And that would give me, just enough of a gallon of gas to get far enough to get to work. One of the things that I've always done is always have a gas economic car, which is very important right now. But even if you don't, just break down what you're going to need into a bit daily basis. So everything, all your bills, break them down and have an amount that you need each day to hit your targets for your bills for the month. So that's 30 individual lines of what you need for each day. And if you know you've made it that day, then you have extra money to place in either an investment or savings or to go out and have a little fun. Make sure that you clearly state each operational cost. Otherwise, it gets a little out of hand and things get a little weird when you're looking at your 30-day target. If for some reason you have money left over for your daily targets, and you come home and you check and you're like, I got this plus some more, then I would definitely tell you put some aside for accidents, or in my case, bank errors or straight theft. Either way, it has always helped me to have that in mind so that like when I walk into a bank and I had nothing left, I looked at tomorrow and I knew I only needed 100 and something, 200 some dollars to cover that next day's target. I'm not just like, oh my God, that the month, that's it. The whole month is gone. No, I'm just like, okay, tomorrow I need this amount of money. And then the next day I need to figure out how I can make this amount of money. And it makes you feel good. Like, okay, I've got this under control. I can do this. This is not beyond my grasp. One of the huge things that I really loved having was just having the information and the knowledge to have a layered income stream. So building multiple financial pillars. As I said before, some of them I split up and I have like a little bit of investment. So I have a tiny little, literally like drip drop of dividend money coming in. Find a side hustle, find a hobby. You've heard that one 1,001 times before. A lot of times I look at clothes that I had bought earlier. Do you have designer bags? These things you can now flip. Do you have used books? Have you had books that you've read? You can now sell those. What you're doing is you're looking around to see what resources that you have that you can then sell to make another income stream. Sometimes it's important when you do have the cash to think about the fact that maybe something will happen and no, maybe I don't have a liquid cash income stream for big problems. But I did on the other hand buy me this designer purse and put it to the side because you can then sell the designer purse as your stream. Occasionally I'll buy some jewelry and I can then, wingle out right off my finger, turn that in and melt it down for the gold and sell that. But the thing is that you're looking for ways to make sure that you have another income stream if necessary, not necessarily just dividends, not necessarily just your stocks, not necessarily just, your side gig, but you're also looking at things that you have inside your home that are unnecessary that you can sell. Um, and when I say jewelry, it does not necessarily mean just gold. You can also look at vintage jewelry that you have or vintage replica jewelry that you have and sell that to an antique store. Layers of income just to insulate the fact that things happen, things go up and down, and you're going to need something. You're going to need that safety net because, as the poem said, hey, there are feats defying gravity here. And that's what we're all doing right now, unless, we are one of the lucky few that don't have to worry about money. We're all looking at feats to defy gravity or our credit score or our bank account or just the cash in our wallet. Operate on available capital. So always try to use the money that you can come up with. If you have credit cards, once something big happens, I tend to set them to the side because the last thing I want to do is accrue interest because that's out of control. That's out of my hand. And if this happens again, and or if it happens back to back to back to back, where am I going to find that capital? Where are you going to grab it? So instead, you set the credit cards to the side. And if you do use the credit cards, use them for something that's predictable and controllable. Like, hey, my electric bill, that's that's not gonna be something I can pay. Putting that on my credit card. Um, Part of my car payment, just other credit card payments, things that are absolutely predictable, that are not going to change. Credit card, your Netflix, if you really need your Netflix or you really want your cable or your streaming service or something, not gonna change. There you go. That's another thing that I don't normally talk about, but a lot of times when unpredictable things happen, you often end up having to cut back your lifestyle, and it doesn't feel good at all. So a lot of times what I do is I'll write what I love to have on a little chart, what I like to have, and then for my loves and likes, what's free that can actually sit there in its place until I can get back to a place where I can afford what I love and I like. I love going out to eat. Instead of me doing that, is there a frozen food section of that in my grocery store? And when is it on sale? Perfect. Another thing, I like to have a drink out. Can I join a wine club to make that predictable? Save up those bottles of wine. So all of a sudden, I can't afford it. I can't afford going out to drink. Well, I can go to the place where I bought the wine prepaid and then drink it there. Still get to go out. Um, there are so many other ways you can do that. Customize it to your lifestyle. I don't know if anyone has any questions, comments, and or concerns about this, but these are some of the ways that we were able to bounce back from financial struggles. I'm hoping that they're able to help you. I know that they've helped me over the entire decade, that those were my struggles. I'll also let you know that that struggle did end. Finally. It took a very, very long time for it to end, but it did end. And I was able to get my footing on the ground. But now when things happen unexpectedly, I'm not gonna lie, this year something happened so crazy and unexpected. And all of a sudden back in this sort of situation where I need to move from my love and my like to my, hey, what can I replace this with? But I'm able to do it. Still able to have a lifestyle, still able to do a little traveling, still able to go out on, and enjoy myself and live life. It's really because I've become very adept at using these things, especially the layered income streams. Because if you have those layers of income streams, it's almost like having a small net beneath you. I'm not saying make a large net. I'm not saying make a mattress in the P stack mattresses. What I am saying is just try to make a little something. I literally, when I say a little something, I'm saying buy $1 of a stock, 10 if you can, but literally start with $1 and see if you can't start making something there to help. There are other things out here and other places available where you can get emergency resources. for your electric bill, for your heating, for just about everything. So definitely check those out as well. Do not feel ashamed that you have to check them out. I know I felt like so embarrassed every time I had to check it. I was like, oh my God, no, not again. I cannot believe this is me and this is what's happening. Don't. This is life and it happens. But it does not mean that you have to change. Remember that you still have things that are free. If you're healthy, you still have your health. If you're happy, you still have your family, you still have those moments of happiness. If you have nothing else, remember that at one point that you smiled sometime during your life and hold on to that because you will smile again. And that is the end of my finance chats. As I said, we are going to now talk about rage because as we go through things in life and we have to be resilient and we have no choice but to be resilient and or we have to choose to escape and we have to choose to turn our lives upside down. We have to choose to be broke or we're going to lose everything. We get a little angry at what put us here. So before we get into that, there is a poem about this. Again, from the end, I thought I did my journey alone because we're all here journeying together. What am I supposed to be? By Alexis Rose. It's dark in my room, but darker in my head. A tempest rages of self-doubt. What is my existence about? I can't help but to believe what I have always heard about me, that I am talented and write exceptionally, but I'm lying on a bed in a home that I can't pay rent for. The mattress is on the floor. I ask myself who I am and where I am going, and I see the situation at the tunnel's end glowing so smugly, so brightly, but I can't get there yet. I want to run from my failure to my future and accept my grown life, become a suburban housewife. But I have dreams which wait for me ever so expectantly. I want to see where those dreams will take me. But my situation blinds everything but the room I see. I want to be murdered by adulthood for my own good. Just how does one kill their soul without grieving? Who am I supposed to be? A dreaming child or an adult or responsible and mild? I see freedom watching the numbers fall backward as the bill's sums add up and the waves of passing planes. I want to be on one, but can't do that yet. We see the cell door from freedom's prison yard. We taste it in the wind. We email it, but it doesn't send. We sew our freedom back together to mend it again. We smell freedom inside from prisons. Escape is the option, but we just can't seem to find that vision. With every step, every breath, every win, every season, every motivating reason. And we're running gleefully, weary free is how I will be, wandering aimlessly. And still, I'm wandering in the sea of me. We're going to hear from Candace, and she is going to talk to us about how we can channel that rage, that wandering in the sea of us after trauma or within trauma or challenges or financial challenges, and how we can make a little space where we can be something other than just our anger.
I'm author Candice Lola, and I was raised to be a good girl. Don't talk back. Don't raise my voice. If I had it and you needed it, it was yours, even if I needed it. Forgive easily and often. Don't take up too much space. And don't defend myself. Get an adult to do that or some other authority. And I tried. I really tried for the first few years of my life. I tried to stick to that. But life crept in. People got on my nerves. People tried to hurt me. People did hurt me. I saw other people getting hurt. And I saw people advocating for other people to get hurt. And at first, I used the proper channels. I told my parents, I told my pastor, I told the principal, I told other family members, I prayed, I tried to learn more. But I still saw people getting hurt. I still saw people that were doing the hurting getting protected, and I was still getting hurt. And so by the time I got to about the fourth grade, I decided to take matters into my own hands. There was a little boy who had been messing with me. He told me that he was going to punch me. So I slapped him across the face before he finished that sentence. We get into loud political arguments with my family members. I would shut down any teachers who tried to corner or humiliate or humble me. And I was pretty vilified for this, if you can imagine. By the time I got to high school, I had a reputation for being really angry, for cussing everybody out, is what they used to say. Even though I didn't use curse words, but the fire was immediately vilified in me, and that made me feel really ashamed. Anger wasn't a large part of my personality. I just saw myself as defending myself, but I had to get rid of the anger, which didn't happen in high school. High school is such a frustrating place. It didn't happen in high school either. And so by the time I left home at 17 to go to college, I left in shame. I left to find a change of scenery, to see if I could get a hold of this anger that felt alien. It felt like it was coming from the outside and that I had no control over it. But as more of the world revealed itself, as I learned how power moves, as I gained more life experience, the injustices and the transgressions piled up. I saw more innocent people being hurt and being victimized. I was hurt. I saw attackers being comforted and protected. I heard beliefs and doctrines and group thought that defended terrible things and attacked victims or people who spoke out. And that made me feel powerless, which made me feel frustrated, which made me feel really angry, which made me feel really ashamed. And so I didn't get a hold of it in college either or graduate school. And I got to the point where I worked myself into a shame spiral that took a year to crawl out of. That was the same year I started writing the first draft of my book, Women of Glass and Other Parables. Creating that first draft felt like I sort of closed my eyes and started typing. A lot of it felt unconscious. And when I came to, so to speak, I had written a horror collection, which shocked me and terrified my mom. But I did not know that my anger ran that deep, that it was that visceral or violent or nuanced. But I think what scared me the most is how powerful it made me feel. It made me feel powerful to live in that anger. I was afraid of my own power, is what I realized. Why did my own power feel out of my control? And it wasn't until a little while later that I realized that it was the shame. The shame of my anger kept me from accessing it, kept me from knowing it. There was a psychologist in the early 1900s named Sylvan Tompkins who came up with the shame and effect theory. He calls shame an interrupter of positive effect. He says that shame is a built-in inhibitor that comes to limit or interfere with any expression of affect, drive, or any form of perception or of synthesis, which is important. Shame, in a word, disrupts any feeling or perception of unity, and in my case, any self-unity. My anger felt alien and overwhelming to me because my shame kept it in the dark, kept me from accessing it, kept me from getting to know it. It kept me fragmented, and a house divided cannot stand. In order for me to channel my anger, I needed to integrate it, look at her in its face, listen to her, understand that she has some good points, understand that it was an honor to dedicate my collection to feminine rage. It's extremely important for women to acknowledge their rage. It's extremely important for women to integrate the parts of our personality that we have been shamed away from. It's important to the future of the world. It's important to the future of the communities that we support and protect and create. That we are critical of the beliefs that we hold, the world that we live in, the world that we come from, and the way we carry ourselves in the world. Even if you don't end up changing your external world too much, you need to find yourself. Find yourself before shame and convention fettered you. I happen to be a big Marvel Comics fan. I have been that way since I was a kid. So I was really excited about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And in the first Avengers movie in 2012, we have a really famous scene. The Avengers are downtown. They're fighting off some invasive alien space force. What else is new? And most of the team is on the ground fighting. Black Widow, Hawkeye, Thor comes, and Captain America doing, fighting the ground invasion. And then Bruce Banner, who is the human half of the Hulk, sort of puts up on a rickety bike. Right when Tony Stark, Iron Man, comes over the radio and says, "I'm bringing the fight to you." And he comes around the corner. There's a huge alien spaceship behind him. Now, as you know, Bruce Banner can only access the Hulk when he's angry, which makes it kind of a volatile part of himself. And so Captain America looks at Bruce and goes, "I think it's time to get angry." Bruce, who had been Bruce almost the whole movie, turns to Cap and says, "That's my secret. I'm always angry." And by the time he turns back around to face that spaceship, he's the Hulk, his lethal fist posed, ready in less than a second. That is a power of emotional integration. Bruce Banner tried all method of upheaval to get rid of the Hulk. He even tried killing himself a couple of times. It wasn't until he acknowledged that the Hulk was him, was a part of him. His anger was a part of him and was always going to be there, that he was able to get it under control and access it when he needed it. Your rage, your anger is your personal warrior. It's urgent. It gets things done. What follows anger is change, undeniable change. And I believe that's why women have been denied our anger for so long, for this very reason. We're natural world builders, natural change makers. Humanity continues because of us. We are the gatekeepers of humanities. Imagine the power of an angry gatekeeper. Imagine the things that would have to come to a grinding halt in order to placate them. Imagine the change that would ensue. Imagine the power. Wouldn't you try to calm us down too? We as women can never forget our power, and you as a woman can never be ashamed to reclaim yours. We're up against it as women in this country. Changes have been coming faster and faster. It's time to wake up your warrior and set her loose. Remove that film of shame and look your rage in the face. She is you. She's a gift of speed and protection and intense protective love. And you should never deny yourself that. I'm Candace Lola, author of Women of Glass and Other Parables, and it's time to get mad. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Candace. Woo! I'm almost ready for a fight up in here, which is sad to say. I don't think I've ever heard rage or the frustration that comes along with rage explained like that before. And I think Candace did an absolute wonderful job explaining it. And that's a lot of change that can happen. An angry gatekeeper can get a lot done, mostly because I've made a lot of gatekeepers angry. They got a lot done. All right, we are coming up to our last speaker for the day. Um, Her name is Vivian King, and she is going to talk to us about the frustration and the anger that comes with health. I know we probably should have waited with health problems and what she was able to do in order to have those health problems be something that she could take care of, something that she was able to understand in her own limitations. She was able to be like, okay, this is what I do now. And I think that's an amazing thing, especially when you are looking at a new reality. Because when you have health problems, that is exactly what you're looking at, a new reality. And that is one of the hardest things to look at often is a new reality and then say, okay, I can live within it. And I'm still a useful person. And as ladies, we have a lot of responsibility. It's moms, sisters, friends, girlfriends, wives, caregivers. It's a lot. But to be able to look at that and say, okay, I have a new role, I have a new place, but I'm gonna go ahead and find a way that I can handle this new role. Alrighty. So I'm gonna go ahead and read our poem that will get us started thinking about this sort of thing before we hear from Vivian. What the Traveler Feels. Again, from And I Thought I Did My Journey Alone, because we are not journeying alone today. We are journeying with other people that are going to help us give us the courage to talk about our issues and then maybe help someone else. Because I'm hoping next year, when we do this again, that you will be here telling us how this helped or how you were able to find a solution to your problems. So maybe next year, this panel is you on here. And I would be thrilled to hear your story. What the Traveler Feels. Sense deprived, wearied, ceasing, his forehead of thought down and drowns out all help and all hope. Belief transform into darkening doubts. They are misplaced stones who trip over, mistaken signs to misguide, and his battery has just died. The rain pours over his frame and undershirt, cursing himself for all the decisions, those wise and unwise. It's dim in those hopeful eyes, stumbling over his feet, searching for money, for something to eat. The cell dinging as a warning, it's all going to be running low soon. Yet we're just too far to go home, too far to arrive. So the foot goes down, up, and down again, keeping the flicker of hope alive in those eyes. So for our last speaker, this is Vivian King.
Well, it's great to be here. My name is Vivian L. King, and I say L. King because that is the name that I use for my books. And I wrote a book called When the Words Suddenly Stopped, Finding My Voice Again After a Massive Stroke. And it was a very cathartic a process, I should say, because I am a recovering stroke survivor. So that I'm glad to be here to talk about healing because, healing from a stroke or any health crisis can be a process or is a process. And I would love to help other people through that if we can.
Well, that's very lovely. I mean, you look so young to have had a stroke.
Thank you.
Would you mind telling us like how it happened, maybe even your age at that time?
Absolutely. And if I tell you my age at that time, then you'll be counting like what? Okay.
No, we won't be counting.
No, but yeah, this came out of the clear blue. Like I tell people, my life changed on October 25th, 2013, because I got up that morning. It was a Friday. At the time, I was the VP of community relations for a healthcare system, and I was supposed to go to this Girl Scouts breakfast. The only reason I lamented that I had to do that was because I had had a busy week and I thought, ooh, I don't feel like going to this breakfast. But then I said, nope, a friend of mine invited me weeks ago. And at that time, I would always fill tables at events. And so I didn't want to be that person who didn't go to an event for no good reason. So I said, let me get up and go. So I jumped up, took a shower, got dressed, rushed out of the house and without my makeup on. Now, I used to be a television anchor and reporter, and I would never go anyplace without makeup, right? So usually I take it, and I was like, okay, if I don't do it at home, I'll do it on the way or once I get to my final destination. So I got to my final destination and forgot totally about my makeup. So I think the episodes started happening on my way to this breakfast because when I got there, I got out of the car, didn't put my makeup on. As I was walking in, people asked me, who I was there for, and I told them. So I was cognizant enough to do that. I got to the table and somebody asked me, are you okay? Do you need something to eat? And I said I was okay, but somebody got me something to eat anyway. I took one bite of sausage, and that's the last thing I clearly remember for 10 days. I collapsed from a seizure, and they rushed me to the hospital. I was in neurological ICU for 10 days, in the hospital for a total of 32 days, and doctors said that I had a stroke. And I don't have high blood pressure, still don't, didn't then, still don't have history of stroke in my family. Birth control, doctors said birth control pills over the age of 40 caused the blood clot in my brain, and it bled out over the part that manages your speech. And I literally couldn't talk for 3.5 weeks. And so people did not believe that I, who was relatively healthy, had never had an issue, would have a stroke. And when I told them about the link between birth control pills and blood clots that caused this, they were shocked. And especially because I was otherwise healthy. Nobody expected this. So that's why I wrote this book, When the Words Suddenly Stopped, Finding My Voice Again After a Massive Stroke, because I thought people needed to really realize that stroke can almost happen to anybody. And, I'm like a living example, but you can also survive a stroke. And that's what I wanted to write this book about as well.
After being a TV anchor, your job was speaking, and then being the VP in healthcare, like that, your job was communication.
Absolutely.
How did you bounce back from that? How did you keep going? Because at that point, I think that I would be like, okay, I'm just done, right? Because I couldn't speak for 3.5 weeks. I just had a stroke. I'm young. Like, what in the world am I supposed to do now? But you're still doing so much. And so, how did you overcome that and continue on?
Well, first of all, everybody says, and it is ironic that, I was a television anchor, I was a reporter, I speak on for a living. And so my pastor, when I interviewed him about this book, he said when we heard about it, we're like, that's her living. She makes a living from speaking. What is going on? And I just think that I'm very faithful. And I when I look back on this, I think that God spared me because he wanted me to get this message out. And I just did what the doctor said. But in my book, I really talk about how faith, family, and friends converged to lead me from trauma to triumph. I had a lot of great friends because I was living in Milwaukee, which I still am. And at the time, now my mom lives with me, but at the time I didn't have any family here. So my sorority sisters just rallied around me. My church rallied around me. And people just made sure that they were there for me. They made sure that my parents got information immediately. My mom came up here. They surrounded her and had a schedule, an Excel spreadsheet that said who was going to pick her up to take her to the hospital this day, etc. And so I really had a lot of friends and family and sisters. I had 12 sisters by the end of this, because before my mom came up here, they were like, only immediate family can come back and see her. And people, my sorority sisters were saying, tell them that you're her sister. And so I ended up having 12 sisters. But it was really just doing what the doctor said, and just having the people around me kind of not giving up on me, because the doctors told my sorority sisters, we don't, in the beginning, especially since I was in neurological ICU, they said, we don't know what the outcome is going to be, but you may have to get used to a new normal for Vivian. And my sorority sister said, no, we're not gonna, no, we want her back the way she was, and we're gonna work to do that. And so they helped, my mom helped. And so they really were my backbone during that time. And I just really think even, the doctors can do so much, but if you have people, advocating for you, people praying for you, people doing the things that need to be done, to the extent that they can do something, a lot can happen, and positive things happen. A positive outcome is what can happen.
I love that. I love that you were surrounded by your sisters. And so that actually leads me to another question. So as you were talking about, you were surrounded by your sorority sisters and your really good friends and your mom. How do you still feed into your relationships with them and keep it strong? Because now you're back, you're speaking, you have this wonderful book out and all these other things. And as women, I think we get very tired, very like have a lot of hats that we're wearing, and sometimes our own relationships is what we let go instead of maybe not doing this one thing that needs to get done but doesn't need to get done immediately. So how do you keep those bonds tight?
You just do. In fact, right before this interview, we had to push this back because I had forgotten about a commitment that I made. I'm very active in my sorority, which is Delta Sigma Theta, and I'm here in Milwaukee for the Milwaukee Alumni Chapter. So we have adopted a polling site, and so at the time of this interview, we have an election on Tuesday, and so we had to set up for that, and so that kind of, because I've made a commitment to that, I still keep in touch with my sorority sisters and I'm still active. But what we do for each other, we make sure we know when we see somebody and we think, oh, they're a little off or whatever, we make sure, are you getting enough rest? What do you need from me? Because a lot of times we don't, we will do too much. And so sometimes we need to step back. And so we kind of look out for each other, and especially those of us who are single. And I'm single, and I have several sorority sisters who are single. And so a lot of times, we make sure we look out for each other so that, we make sure that everybody's okay. And we know that you have to slow down. We know, that you have to really kind of watch what you're eating, how much sleep are you getting. And so if you have kind of like a partner in that, it just makes life easier.
That's wonderful.
Thank you so much for taking this time out. We know that you're super busy because you're always super busy. What are some final words that you would like to leave with our audience today about healing after a major health crisis? And where can people find out more about you?
Absolutely. So first of all, I think we should not be afraid to share information about our health situation. A lot of times culturally, our culture may say, oh, that's family business, that's personal business. I'm not saying, tell all your business, but find some trusted people that, have concrete information about you that you can call and they can be there. Because if I had not, first of all, now I tell everybody, share when you can, because what you don't share, what you're keeping a secret, could kill you. And so, since I know about the link between birth control pills and strokes, and I've written this book, people now can go to this book and they're not afraid to, say, you know what, that happened to me. Or if they know somebody, that happened to somebody, a friend of theirs. You know, you just need to find somebody trusted that you can share information because, how else are people going to know that, these things are happening or could happen? That's why I think God spared me to share this story. He said, she's a journalist, she is used to telling stories. And so if this happens to her, she'll spread this word. And so, that's what I've tried to do. And I just, find a trusted partner, because what you keep in, could kill you. And the day that I collapsed, if I had not gone to the Girl Scouts breakfast, if I had, this was a Friday morning, if I had stayed here, I would have had that stroke at 7:30 a.m. on a Friday morning in my condo. And I travel a lot. If I was not around over the weekend, people might have said, oh, she's probably out of town, whatever. They wouldn't have found me until I didn't show up for work on Monday morning. And so I just feel like God spared me, got me up. Something inside of me said, you got to go ahead and go. And it was really to say, hey, my friend invited me weeks ago. And so that commitment to her got me up. And I think that's why, like I said, he spared me to share this information. And so, trust somebody, not the whole block, but trust somebody to make sure they know what's going on with you. And you can reach me at vivianlking.com. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, Vivian L. King, author Vivian L. King on Facebook. And I'm so basic, at Vivian L. King on the others as well. So find Vivian L. King.
You're not basic, you're memorable. That's not basic, that's smart business sense. So thank you so much for sharing your story and where people can pick up your book and how to get over a major health crisis and still come out looking as gorgeous as you and having such a great spirit. Thank you so much for moving on to our next speaker.
Thank you, Vivian. I really enjoyed hearing about the connection between birth control and strokes, especially for someone who is young. It's always nice to know. I want to thank all of our participants today. That includes me. Hey, I get to thank me for once in my life. Kasey for telling us how we can find resources to get over abuse, what to do when we're leaving. um, for me, talking about getting through finances, how to keep yourself kind of happy and still have self-care while your finances are a little tight. And then, of course, Candace for telling us about to dealing with the frustration that comes and the anger that comes along with trauma and how we can actually produce something wonderful from it. And you definitely have to pick up her book. Her anger wrote a beautiful book. And then lastly, Vivian King for explaining in beautiful, artful words what it's like to get over a health scare and then try to deal with the limitations and what we can do to find support and who we should tell and keep in our actual web of people, of our network of people that need to know when we're not feeling well. or who are going to check up on us. I thank all of these ladies for sharing their stories first and foremost, sharing their frustrations, sharing how they were able to get over them, how they have made them better people. Because this day that's exactly what it's for women to share that and build a community where they encourage each other to be better versions of themselves. Now, since again, this is National Poetry Month, I'm going to end this wonderful little session with some poetry. We have Paradise View by me, Wilnona Marie. These people see these worlds for me, and I'm not sure they exist. I'm always stuck on the ground, floor permafrosted in this. What I see, what I touch, what I know is real. Yet I can, under the appeal of, the imagination of, the destinations far flung, strung like Christmas lights twinkling in the sunsets, inviting a colorful goodbye. Now, that it's apparent, the appearance should be applauded. More and more, I'm ever grateful to stand on the shores, the sands of realization shores. And I think this day has actually entitled us to a lot because we've made it through so many years. However old you are right now, you've made it through these amount of years with your experiences, challenges, frustrations, and traumas. And you're here. If you were planning on sharing and you didn't, you were here. For the ladies who did share, thank you. Because you are here to share your tales too. So this poem goes out to all of us. This is on my title deed, and it was written by all the ladies in the book. Titles are the beginning of the journey, but for those who finish it, it's what they are entitled to. We're entitled to wear our shiners because we decided it's not for me. We take possession of a note to our scared selves and turn a quarter-life crisis into our paradise view. So we become better than a relapsed statue. We acknowledge and appreciate all the sages we have met, especially today, the sages we've met. And the words amongst our bourbon, be they alcoholic or non, we take ownership of what a traveler sees, of what we feel, and what we know. And that's the wisdom all our own. This is what's on my title deed. What's on yours? Find your journey. It's time. You are entitled to it. You can find out everything that your ladies are doing, Wilnona Marie. Find out everything that your ladies are doing at www.andithoughladies.com. If you want to get the book, it is called And I Thought I Did My Journey Alone. Please feel free to reach out to any of the ladies that you saw today and get some more advice or information or pick up their books to find out more advice there. And we thank you for joining us today. And we look forward to hearing your voices and to getting encouragement from you next year. Have a wonderful Not Girlfriend Me Too Day and continue to read some poetry during National Poetry Month.